Awesome. Welcome everyone to Freeze Frame, our live chat today with one of the filmmakers being featured in this year's festival. We have Tara Audibert. Am I saying that right, Tara?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, great. Yes, perfect.
Like, out of all the things I asked you to help me pronounce, I didn't do your name. I was just so confident that I knew it, and with good reason, it turns out.
Perfect.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're so happy to have you here. And I'm just going to start out by introducing myself. My name is Amanda Kinzerski. I am a filmmaker. I work with Freeze Frame quite a bit. I am born and raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I am Ojibwe, Métis, Polish, and Ukrainian. And I'm very, very happy to be here. I'm going to give a quick description. Here we go. We got phones in the office. I'm going to give a quick description of what I'm wearing right now. I'm wearing a gray shirt with pineapples on it. I have my hair back in a ponytail. I've got a little white streak in there. I have whiter skin. I have vitiligo, so I have very white skin. And behind me is a poster of the freeze frame symbol logo. Yeah. And so I would also like to introduce to everyone Tara, and I'm just going to read your bio here, and there might be some things that I don't know how to pronounce, but I'm going to figure it out, or I'm going to throw it to Tara. So we're having a conversation with Tara, who is from the Tobique First Nations. Multidisciplinary, oh, that's funny because I asked you about it and now I can't do it. Multidisciplinary work, combining traditional First Nations art and storytelling with contemporary design and digital mediums. Works by Tara include the award-winning animated short film, The Importance of Dreaming, also illustrations for comics such as This Place, 150 Years Retold, and Lost Innocence. And the storytelling app, Nadab, I'm saying it wrong. I'm going to need you to redo that for me. Legends of the First Nations. She has also illustrated books such as Jojo Macoon's Fiddleheads for Fox and Moonbeam. And welcome, Tara. Although I will say, I believe that we've lost, or at least I've lost Tara's feed right now.
Yes, Tara has just dropped out of the meeting. I'm going to let her in when she pops back in.
Okay. So we're going to be talking today with Tara, and we're actually, luckily enough, have clips that we're going to show. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Got you back.
Yeah. Sorry, we're having a huge windstorm.
No, I bet. And the weather isn't the greatest here. So we're going to be talking today about your career in general and all these different things that you do, which is so amazing. But we're also going to be showing clips, which is really awesome because I've had a chance to look at a lot of this stuff and I think it's great. So maybe we'll just start out. I did my probably not the greatest intro of you. Do you want to talk a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Tara Audibert. You pronounced it exactly correct. I am of Wolastoqey and French heritage from Tobique First Nations here in New Brunswick. And I am a filmmaker, illustrator, artist, and I do a lot of my work centers around Indigenous culture, and I try to bring Indigenous culture into the digital space of books and film and TV, and really anything artistic and fun.
Which is awesome. I love that. Yeah, definitely, especially the fact that you're delving into the app. I think it's important to Indigenous futures that we're a part of all of these new things and able to storytell the best we can. So
Absolutely.
It's great. Yeah. So you have a film playing in Freeze Frame. It's called The Importance of Dreaming. It's gorgeous. So I was wondering, actually, maybe we should watch the clip first. So we'll get our tech person to play the clip. And then once we come back, we'll talk a little bit about it.
Awesome. Owl told them many stories, and the foxes liked Owl.
Awesome. So, yeah, what an amazing film. It looks great and also has great themes in it. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the idea for the film came up?
Yes, for sure. So the importance in dreaming, it's on the surface, I guess it's this love story between an owl and a fox. The fox is red and the owl is white. And essentially, it's the story of both my parents falling in love. So my mom being Indigenous and my dad being non-Indigenous. And he was quite a bit older than my mother as well. And he knew my mother's family, and essentially was well loved. Everybody loved him, and then I guess until the time when they announced that they were going to be married, and then at the time it was during Bill C-31, and wasn't accepted for. Well, not that it wasn't accepted. If any Indigenous woman married a non-Indigenous man, she lost her status. So this was like a point of contention for sure, and just like why are you doing this? Why would you want to move away from your family? And they kind of kind of ended up turning her back, and they chose each other. And kind of like this true love story. They chose each other, and kind of went away and started having children. And so I was the first one born. And I guess when I was born, my grandparents, I was also the first grandchild from my family. So they were like, well, okay, we got to kind of come back. So because of that, everyone kind of came back and became, a big family once again. But I wanted to tell this story because it was a story that I heard all my life growing up, and it was just something it was just very weird to me, and I didn't hear anybody others like anyone else's family talking about this, and it's something that I would not want to happen again, and really like part of what I like to do with any kind of messages is to bring these to the next generation because they're the ones that are going to be making the decisions, making changes. The life that or the world that we live in now is already built, and we're living in it. But they're the ones that are going to make the changes. So I think that the messages should be for them and at a level that anyone can understand. And I think anyone watching this movie would see, that's not fair. That's weird. Why don't they want a fox and the owl to be in love? Why are they against it? What they can see, it's not correct. It's not right. And I want to do that on so that all like anyone can understand it, children can understand it, but I also think that adults will be able to understand that as well. On another level, the film itself talks about the owl. So the owl was dreaming. So it says this at the beginning: the owl is dreaming, and my dad had Alzheimer's, and at the end of his life, he was not with us, but he was somewhere. Like his mind was somewhere. His body was with us, but he himself was somewhere else. And I guess in my mind, this is a little bit of my idea that makes me feel a little bit better. That maybe his mind was here in this place and thinking about just his whole life and everything that he had been through. And I'm presenting it in this way of this owl and a fox. But it's about him dreaming and thinking about all these things that had happened. So it's on that other level. And I think a lot of times when I tell adults that, it hits them even harder But a lot of times I don't really even have to talk about that. They get the message. When you can put it on this such a simplistic level, it's I think very easy to understand for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to say now for anybody who's watching, if you do have questions for Tara, you can put them in the chat and we're going to get to them a little bit later in the talk. I will also say I had read about the connection to the Alzheimer's. I didn't realize, Bill C-31. I got my treaty card under that because my grandmother was
Ah,
shipped. So I actually didn't get my treaty card till I was 32 under the Gender Equality Act.
so
So
there's lots of stories like this that I
yeah,
just don't think that the Canadian populace knows about. And
agreed.
what a better way to present that, even you know, in this kind of fashion, so that everybody kind of gets it. It's not
Yeah.
right.
And
It shouldn't
also
happen again.
for sure. And the idea that one that well, there's so many layers to this, and I do want to talk about um the other thing that I had read about this, but the idea that it's how we do things is storytelling. It's very, very important to us. These ideas of things that have happened in history, but also, and this seems so cliche to say, but the world we're living in now, having these types of stories and reiterating the importance of these stories where kids are being they get a lot of the negative stories in video games and other places, and not that it's only negative, but kids at very young ages are getting extremely negative stories, and there's almost stories like this aren't valued in the same way that they obviously should be. So I think it's a great story, but I also wanted to say what is it, quantum physics. I think you mentioned that in the bio. You're talking about how it's a simple story. It's also a very not simple story too, right? Like I thought that was so cool.
So I did. Wow, this is awesome. I love to get into this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I like it.
I okay. So I guess part of this is that, and what it has to do with quantum physics. That's crazy. Is just that it had to do with partially of my idea where my dad was, or what he was thinking at the time, and had to do with about dreaming. So one of the things I guess you see a lot today, it has to do with you have to think it and want it before it can happen to you, I guess. So I'd have to know, oh, hey, like I want to make a film before the film's going to happen. I'm going to have that idea that the film is going to happen. Um, so one of the reasons that my parents or my family didn't want my parents to get married is that my father used to be a Catholic priest, and he left the priesthood um, long before he and my mother ever fell in love. But that was one of the things, one of the reasons why they didn't want them together. With him, he had come to the reserve as a punishment as a Catholic priest. They'd sent him to the reserve because he was very outspoken. He did a lot of things that were considered not good by the Catholic Church, I guess, and he spoke out about a lot of things and a lot of the treatment. One of just the way the Catholic Church treated anyone that was, indigenous for sure, but it wasn't just from this country alone, like all different countries, and he was very against that. My dad marched with Martin Luther King. And he did a lot of things. He ended up bringing some students from the college that he worked at to the march because they didn't have a way to get there, so he drove them down, and he ended up getting in trouble for that as well. So he got in a lot of trouble, and his punishment was that they sent him to the Indian Reserve because what could be worse than that, to have to, deal with all these heathens.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like the Briar Rabbit because he loved it there. He loved all the people. He loved everyone. He loved that it was beside this beautiful river. So the Woolistocki is the Woodstock St. John River. It's a beautiful river, and the Woolistocki people are people of the beautiful river. And my dad absolutely loved it there. And while he was there for his punishment, he kind of just got even a better taste of what the Catholic Church was about, and he ended up leaving the priesthood. So he left. He also left the reserve, but he had letters written between he and my mom, and through these letters, they ended up falling in love. Like, I don't know what's, I don't know. Sounds like something that you should hear about on Catfish or something, right? Like that. Is it real? I don't know. So this is part of why they were kind of against it. Here's this person who was a former priest, my mother, and then they fell in love. They didn't think it was going to be something real. And they ended up getting married, and everything came to fruition. But what I would have to say is that further on down the line, that where was his dream of this? Where was his dream of having a family? If you're a priest, especially a Catholic priest, why would you be dreaming of having a family or thinking of that? So coming back to the quantum physics, if anybody is still following this, my idea is that he dreamt about it when he had Alzheimer's, and this was almost a causation. So he's getting the Alzheimer's, and he's able to have this dream that he doesn't remember, of this life that he doesn't remember in the moment, but dreams about it. And maybe that dream, whatever, goes back quantum physics style, and then he's had the dream, and it affects him in, not in a linear way of time.
I love it.
If you can follow that, oh man, we're gonna be best friends.
Yeah, when I read it, I was like, I love this. I love that we get to talk to you about it, because the movie is kind of the idea kind of in a simpler form, but yeah, you've got such a rich family history, which we are going to get into a little bit later. But I guess next we'll kind of move on to the fact that before you did your first film, you've been illustrating for a while. So we can talk a little bit about, how did you become an illustrator?
Yeah, for sure. I've actually been doing art and illustration and animation for over 20 years now. And I worked as an animator for TV for many years, graduated from school, and then I ended up actually getting tendonitis, and I had like what we would call in animation an arm blowout, like a tire blowout, but your arm doesn't work anymore. So I wasn't able to keep up with the animation. It's very, very, a lot long schedules and a lot of drawing, and so I ended up going into teaching. And while I was teaching, part of what I was teaching was storyboarding, doing comics, and this sort of thing. And I had a friend of mine who I'd gone to school with, and I think this was in 2007, contact me and say, "Hey, I'm writing this comic for, and it's about these residential schools, and wondering if you might be interested in illustrating it." And I was like, oh, that's not something that I'd ever done before. And I read this script, and it was the first time that I had really understood what residential schools were, and what had, the effects and everything. And I was just reading this script, and I was just bawling. And I was like, is this true? Like, is this something you just made up? And he was like, no, this is true. Like, the story is fictional. The characters in it are fictional, but this whole thing is true. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. I had heard things about people that had gone to residential school from my mother's community, and they talked about these people, but it wasn't something that was really discussed. Like, it was kind of like, oh, that happened to them, and it was bad or whatever, and to this day he still wears, like, puts on a whole bunch of different clothes, like a bunch of different pants and a bunch of different belts and a bunch of different shirts, because it was harder for the priests or nuns to get at them by wearing more clothes. And there's a man on the reserve who still does that to this day. And like, to hear stories like that and connect it with all of this, I'm like, oh my God, like, that's crazy. And I was like, I already have a job as a teacher. My arm's not the best, but this is something that I think needs to be known, because I didn't even know, and it needs to be known.
Mhm.
And I illustrated the book, and it actually ended up not being able to be published at that time, because the funders, they lost some funding because of the graphic nature of it. And it was not really, it was like a very, it was not graphic to the extent it needed to be. Let's put it that way. But ended up that the publisher funded it himself, and it was published, and a lot of schools were ordering it, and it actually got put in at the time. They had a Truth and Reconciliation ceremony. This was in 2014, I guess, and it was all across Canada, and was everybody giving their talking about their experiences, and also they were putting articles into the Archives of Canada, and this comic was part of what they put into the Archives of Canada. And I was like, that's amazing to go from not being published to that. And then kind of after that, I just got into more comics that were about Indigenous issues. And then from there, it's something that a lot of women in comics, I guess, as well too, female Indigenous issues. So one of the comics I was asked to do specifically because they were looking for an Indigenous female, graphic designer. There's not a lot of us, I guess. And so they asked me to do a comic about violence against women, because just nobody really wanted to touch those kind of drawings. It was hard to get women to do that, but I think it was important. And a lot of my work, I think, is important, and that it gets done. Otherwise, I don't tend to try to do frivolous things. I guess I try to do things that I think are going to be meaningful and sharing of our culture.
For sure. For sure. I think, that's great. And definitely, in terms of the graphic nature, I think one time we had an instructor that said all the movies that have been made about residential school stuff is probably a 4 to make people feel better. And they said, I hope one day that, you make the 10 so people really understand.
Yeah.
And it really, this idea that you can go from it not being published to slowly people are able to kind of accept it. There's also, I do live action, obviously I don't do illustration, but there's a lot of producers and funders being like, maybe you could tone it down a little bit. And it's like, okay, well, I get that you can't handle it, but sometimes maybe we need to talk to other Indigenous people because they're not always being taught. I come from residential school survivors, and it's not something that we talk about almost ever. I tell people I'm first generation non-residential school, just to get it in people's heads that it's like, it's only recently that people weren't having to deal with this. And so I find that very commendable that you're working in these spaces with these things, and I'm glad that you're getting the recognition that you deserve now.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
I'm glad I'm just glad the messages are getting out and seen, and I think a visual way, it's once you start watching something, it's kind of too late. You already seen it. So.
Yeah. And while we were talking there, some of your illustrations were playing, and they're just gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we can start talking about is your family stories that you had done there. And maybe we'll start out, we'll play the first one. I actually don't know how to pronounce it.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's great. So this is Mataguas. Mataguas, which means rabbit.
Okay.
And sun, which means snow. Mataguas sweep sun.
Fantastic. So let's watch that one first.
Okay, here's what my Grampy said. Grampy said this: Creator, or you can call him Zazus, or you can call him whatever you like, tried to protect animals, and one of the animals he tried to protect was the rabbit, because they have no way of defending themselves except for running or hiding. So in the winter time, the rabbits change, or like fall time, they change from brown to white, so that they kind of blend in with the snow. And then in the spring, they change back to their brown color so that they get camouflaged with all the greenery right in the forest. What he also said was, because the rabbit has no other way to protect itself except to run and hide, the hiding part is covered because it changes, the fur changes from season to season, so it can get camouflaged with the surroundings. But the other thing is, the tracks rabbits make are big. They got big feet. So Grampy said the story goes that when the rabbits are out and about, like in the winter time, to try to protect them. It will snow, and the snowflakes are large flakes, and they are, when you combine a whole bunch of them, they will cover the rabbit's tracks. A rabbit in Maliseet is Matagwas. So Momo said Matagwas weep sun. Like Matagwas is the rabbit, sun is the snow. So it's rabbit snow. That's exactly what it is.
Wonderful. It's so awesome. I'm a little unsure of the timeline. Did you do these before you did The Importance of Dreaming? Where does this come in your timeline of filmmaking? Oh, I can't hear you.
Because I muted myself. Oh God. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
These were after The Importance of Dreaming. I ended up starting a second company, so I have Moxie Fox Studio shorts. But then I have another company with my friend Kirsten Tomlinson called the Neegwed Collective. And it's a non-for-profit where she kind of was along the same lines as me and wanting to put, these stories. There's so many stories and different legends, and the truth of the matter is that our elders are dying, and these stories are going with them because they're all told verbally and passed down verbally. So I mean, like we're gonna have them and be able to keep telling them. But I thought it was something that, and she did too. She actually approached me with this, saying like, this is something that we could, capture and maybe animate in some way, and maybe bring it so that other people could know about these things and share them and share that other aspect of the culture. So there is always, that Indigenous people are victims of this patriarchy of Canada and all of this. But there's another side to our culture. And for me, like, it wasn't all of these things. It was that there was a lot of laughter, there was a lot of stories, there was always storytelling, and so many. And the stories always changed. So even with this story, this is one version of Matagwaswip Sun, but I've heard hundreds of different versions of them from my mother, from different aunts, from, this was passed down from her grandfather. So, even her mother would have told these stories and passed them down. But I think it's important that it's kind of captured in the moment. So we had the idea to animate them, and my partner Kirsten comes from a gaming background, so we were like, well, why don't we do this as some sort of app or a game app where we can easily disseminate this even further than maybe a short film could go, and that anyone across the world would be able to play this app and watch these videos, and that's what we did.
Yeah. It's so good. And so it's part of an app.
Yes, so NEDAB, so we have this game app called NEDAB, and NEDAB means friend in both Wolastoqey and Mi'kmaq. So one of our partners at the time was Mi'kmaq, and we just, like, neither of us really being fluent in either of the languages, kind of discovered, oh my God, we have this shared word, and it's NEDAB, and it's friend. And it's just like, this is amazing. So let's call our app that, and we have this little friend that kind of helps you to go around and listen to these stories. And we're actually redesigning it now. We're on the third iteration, and we've collected about, I think, 20 stories now from New Brunswick, and we've expanded out recently to Nova Scotia and Listigage in Quebec as well. But we hope to, like, gather stories from all across Turtle Island is our hope, and that the app keeps building, and that people can just keep listening to these different stories and sharing our culture.
Yeah, I love that. I'm I've taken some of these courses that are actually very specific to Manitoba and the history of Indigenous peoples here. And when you get past, the traumatic stuff that happened through colonization, I love the social systems we had, and they make so much sense to me. Of definitely how they lived through things, and how the stories were, if we all understand as a group what our basic, morality is, our standards are, then you never have to like argue or advocate for yourself or justice. Like it's all understood. We've been learning the same stories our whole life and we all understand, I love those ideas, and I love that that's where this is coming from. So that's great. I believe we have another one, Little People, that we could show right now that is also from the app, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at that.
We had moved into a house across from where I grew up. I was for the first house, like a little cabin. We all lived there. There was 9 kids, my mom and dad, living in this little cabin with an outhouse. One Christmas Eve, we moved into the larger house. My dad got some money, and he built this, which we thought was a huge house. We lived on the first floor. The first floor was the only floor that was finished, but there was like my parents' bedroom was what became my dad's den, and the living room was our bedroom. So like there was bunk beds, 2 sets of bunk beds, double bed, like there was beds everywhere in this little living room. But anyway, so this one night, in order to go to the bathroom, like you had to pass through the dining room and then the kitchen, and then the bathroom was like adjacent to the kitchen. So this one night, and I don't know why I'm so nosy, anyway, I happened to look out, and it was winter. It was almost blue when you looked out, and with the light reflecting from the moon on the snow was like made it look like it was blue. Anyway, happened to look out, and right across from where we lived was a post, and the post was like cut at an angle pointing downwards. So right on at the tip of this angle was a little man sitting, and he was sitting, his little legs were crossed, and it looked like he had a hat, and I didn't see his face, but I just thought he looked like a little old man. Couldn't see his face because the moon was behind him, and all you could see was the outline. But he was just sitting there with legs crossed, and he looked like he was looking at our house. Anyway, I was like, boing! I saw that, and I was like, oh my God, I have to go tell my mom.
So great. Yeah, so I watched a few of these. The 2 that we just heard, that's your aunt speaking?
This one is my mom. Yeah,
Oh,
these
that
2 are
was
my
your mom.
mom. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh.
Yes. Yeah. So these are the first 2 that I did, and we got funding from the Canada Council for the Arts to create 4 films. These were 2 of them, and then later on, I created films with my great aunt in the Wolastoqey language. She's a fluent speaker, and some of them I had my mom there to translate, so you can hear it
Yeah.
in Wolastoqey and then in English at the same time, and kind of go back subtitles so you can kind of still understand what's going on.
Yeah. They're so great. And were your family like, hey, when are you coming to get my stories?
Yeah, a lot of them were after, but in all honesty, it is hard to get these stories. It is hard to get them recorded. One of the most difficult things about doing this project, and we're like, oh yeah, it's no problem. They never shut up. You go over there and they're just telling stories. You go over there and you plunk a mic in front of them, and they're just like, oh, rabbit snow. It's because it snowed and there was rabbits and cover the tracks. Like, oh my God, can
Yeah.
you just so I'd have to it's a process, and it's not something where you can just go plunk the mic. You can't do that. That's what I learned. You just can't do that. You can't plunk a microphone in front and get these stories. It's something very special, and it's an in the moment thing, really. And I think that's one of the things that doing this project and going through it, and part of what the Nigued Collective does is we also help other Indigenous people to gather these stories, and maybe they're not an animator and can't animate all this stuff themselves. We help them to get with a professional animator so that we can animate the stories, and they're creating the artwork and having the input and how the story is told, and just putting all these things together. And I think that's an important part of what we do as well too.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely isn't easy. I'm taking family stories as well, and they're more than happy to speak in Michif around us, and Soto Ojibwe, and so that we don't know what they're saying, like ants and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, well, maybe you can tell me stories or teach. And they're like, yeah, I'm busy. It's not easy because for them, they're kind of like, yeah, I'm not completely sure what it is, but it's not easy to get these stories, even though you've heard them and you're like, oh, they're incredible storytellers. And then all of a sudden you put a camera and you're like, oh, they're not in a good mood. I have to do a
Yes.
lot of prep to make this organic. It's
Yeah.
not the easiest. And I definitely don't do animation. I do live stuff. I'm trying to get them on camera.
You
And
know.
they don't want to
You
be on
know.
camera.
No,
Oh,
no one wants to be on camera. Absolutely,
I
for
want to be on
sure.
camera all the time. That's why I'm like, what happened to you guys? Don't I
That's
come to you?
awesome.
What's the problem? I'm not scared to do any of this stuff. But yeah, I guess that's why I'm the filmmaker and everybody else is like they like watching films. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, you have these, and then so you have a bunch more of these that we watched the two. But you also have some other stuff coming up. Actually, before we get to that, I will say quickly, if anybody watching does have any questions, I just want to remind everybody, put them in the chat. We will be addressing them a little bit later. We've got about 20 minutes left with Tara. And yeah, so can we talk a little bit about your upcoming film?
Absolutely. So, I Am the Warrior is being screened right now in film festivals internationally.
Okay.
It's also a residential school story. Probably should have like put those two parts together and then ended on a happy note. But it's also a residential school story, and it's actually coming from uh, my idea about second generation residential school survivors. So, not necessarily people that have gone to residential school, but every single person, every single Indigenous person across Turtle Island has been affected by residential schools. And part of that is how anyone that's gone to residential schools or even the Indian day schools was just, treated horribly, may not know how to show love or what that even looks like if you're raised in a place that is where love didn't exist. How are you supposed to pass that on to the next generation? And there's a definite disconnect in there, and I wanted to, I guess at the time, so when I started this film, I Am the Warrior, it was before any of the children were found in the unmarked graves of the residential schools, well before that. And in
Mhm.
my mind, I had done this comic back, in 2007. But in my mind, what was happening is that this was getting brushed under, and we weren't looking, or nobody was seeing that it was still affecting these next generations, because there was just this lack of that, just a lack of that. Like, if you're not raised with love, how would you know how to show that kind of love? And I wanted to show that. And there's a lot of like back anger of like, why, you should be over this by now, maybe, or that's happened so long ago, it should be done, but it's not done, and it's not done for anybody. And I think for a long time, a lot of people are like, why are my parents like this? Like, and just maybe blaming them, like, what is it? And not even knowing, maybe not even knowing some of them had been to residential school. Um, that was another thing, not knowing those stories, and then just wondering like why they're just behaving in these crazy ways. So, again, I wanted to make something that school children, or something that they could show in schools, that would hopefully elicit a discussion about this, that it's continuing. And that's when they started finding all of the children, and it was like, so this isn't even, and then people were shocked and like, whoa, this is what? Like, I thought we were just sweeping that under the rug, but it was like also unknown. So it was like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. And there just needs to be more of these stories put out there, and stories that, yet again, that children can watch and can relate to, and see that this should not be something that happens again, like yet again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say, obviously, you're 100% telling my story. I didn't know until my 30s that my aunts and father and grandmother had either gone to residential school or day school and this stuff. They came to Winnipeg to assimilate for safety. And so this assimilation was big, and I'm the product of assimilation, right? I'm very much a part of that culture. I think a lot of my life was me thriving in that culture and not understanding exactly the things that you're saying, like, why are my parents the way they are? Why are my aunts? And just this, but also the biggest thing for me, and the reason of discussing it, was the idea of talking, because I'm one of the oldest of all my cousins, and telling them, this is why this is happening with them, and anxiety can be passed down generationally. So if you guys aren't aware of what's going on, you may just start blaming yourself for anxieties that you have and problems that you have. And you need to just really be aware of what's happening with them, so that you're more aware of what's happening with you, and to try and break that cycle. And so, yeah, I think that's such a important story that you would tell. Do you, when you're delving into this stuff, what do you do to help? To help yourself, because it's traumatizing. It's very, especially if you didn't grow up with it. I will say, well, or maybe the opposite. I actually don't know other people's, maybe it's harder knowing your whole life, and having the country of Canada not really acknowledge it for so many years. But yeah, what are you doing to keep yourself grounded?
Ooh, yeah. That's such a good question. Honestly, this one of the ways, and this was probably will sound weird, but one of the ways that I kind of know as I'm making a film, that I know it's something that's worthwhile and of value, is that it will constantly make me cry.
Mm.
So this film, it just made me cry, and every time I would talk, even tell someone about it, it would make me cry. And and I think that I just wanted to be able to take that emotion, and honestly, crying, it's an awesome thing that we can do that will relieve stress, just having a good cry all the time. But part of it also as well, when I'm doing some of this, is to get help. With this film in particular, it was just dragging on because I wanted it to be very perfect. I wanted to be very particular, and it was something that I had thought about for years. Yet again, I had applied several times to get funding for it, and it wasn't until last year that I got funding for it. It was, gosh, I want to say like 7 years or something that I had been
Wow.
trying to get funding, and then I got funding, and I was like, oh my gosh! And at the time, I was even like, I can't do all these things, but I need to make this. I want to make this, and I've been trying for so long. I got to make it. So I enlisted the help of Curtis Carey as an animator, and luckily he was just able to take all of my ideas, all of my drawings, all of the artwork that I had done, and put it together into something that looked beautiful, and just captured everything that I wanted it to capture, and present my art in a way that looked nice, and is going to be something that not only yes, it's in film festivals and all this now, but the power of animation is that it can last through time. You think about the Warner Brothers and that, it's time, and kids can watch it for years and years and years and down the line, and it's not going to be something that goes away too easily, or gets like, oh, it looks like it's the 80s, I don't want to watch this, or whatever. But animation, I think, is something that can, at least the story can be told and shown again, and that's something that I wanted to do with it.
And also the people who play the media that we consume, it's being spread out. And I think, you're talking about grant writing, and there's lots of people who are like, oh, well, maybe I can help you with your grant writing. I don't understand why you're not getting the grants. And it's like, and they're thinking maybe I was doing something wrong in the grant. And I was like, or is it that the temperature is changing? And that's the reason why I'm getting grants now, as opposed to not before. Um, when you're living in it, I only went to college not even 10 years ago, and the things that I heard in college about Native people, and I was like,
Mm.
they would have all been canceled. And I was in broadcasting school, and they're all on the radio and television now, and I was like, if I wrote down some of the things that they were saying in my classroom about Native people, they'd all be canceled. So it can't be that we were doing something wrong and telling it. It's the culture, and that's really Yeah. Here's something that I'm interested in really quick that I want to ask you about. So you do animation. Have you ever thought about doing live action, or is that just like never?
I've just never thought about it. We did some with well, Curtis Carey. We do a podcast together,
Oh,
and just kind
it's
of
really,
our podcast branched out into doing some YouTube different little skits and stuff like that. But I think it stems back to just even having a hard time to get people recorded on for just audio. That I'm
Mhm.
like, wouldn't even know how to make anybody move and do stuff. It's just easier if I just draw it.
It's so funny because I think the opposite. I was like, oh, because I have friends who do animation here, and sometimes I'll go into the studio with them, and they have those big machines that have the camera so that you can. And I'm like, never.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
They're
yeah.
in there for hours and hours, and I was like, oh wow, is it like a feature length? They're like, well, no, I'm halfway done a short, and I was like, it's been weeks.
Oh my God.
And I was like,
Yeah, it's
never.
very time consuming.
Yeah, I even teach stop motion animation, obviously for freeze frame. It's one of the programs that I teach, and I'm
Oh,
just like,
that's super awesome.
yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I would go any further than this. I'm like, I don't know, like, because I think in the end I'm a storyteller. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like I am just a storyteller, and luckily enough, I'm able to, do animation, do illustration, kind of do all of these things. But really, all I want to do is tell stories, and in all different mediums, just so I can share our culture. I just think it's amazing, and I think it's something people don't really know about. I would beg to say that people think that there's just one indigenous language across Canada. Like, I really think that that's a thing that some people think, and they're like, "Oh, do you speak Indian or whatever?" Like, no.
No, like even trying to cover just saying hello in Manitoba, I'm like, I don't do it as much anymore, I will say, but there was a time where I was like, okay, uh Tansi, Tanshi, Bonjour,
Oh my God.
Bonjour, which is Ojibwe, and you're trying to, Bonjour, hello, hi, and it's just like that's just Manitoba languages. That's
Yeah.
just you trying to be
Yeah.
respectful to the Manitoba. That's not including, like me and you are like miles and miles away from each
Yes.
other, and also some people were being pushed across North America and their dialects changed, so yeah, no, it's kind of funny. It's similar to if you knew somebody from another country and you lived in Winnipeg and they were like, oh, I'm going to be in Toronto next week, can
Yeah.
I come by and see you? It's that kind of level ignorance, right? Which, you're doing such a good job of taking that away. That's great. um yeah, so no live animation yet. It's not that hard. You should get into
I would definitely be interested for sure.
it. That's funny. Yeah, you know what, for you were saying you don't know how to make people move. I act in some of mine. I
That's
just
smart. I'll just move myself. Yes.
yeah, yeah, just move yourself, then you'll figure it out. That's hilarious. Yeah, so yeah, and what other kind of stuff are you have planned for the future? Actually, before I get into that, can I just ask you, you play the ukulele. Do you play any other instruments?
Yes,
In
I
addition
play
to
the ukulele and get a little bit of guitar as well.
okay,
I'm
yeah, that's
learning.
great.
Yeah.
And just for yourself, or well, you do it on YouTube, so it's not really for yourself. You play it for the public.
Yeah.
But
It is honestly something that I only just started doing, like, I'm going to say like 3 years ago, but I think it's like 7 years ago now. My friend Sam taught me how to play the ukulele. I had one of those little, like a pink one to start with, I think. And I just, all of my life, was just not really able to do musical instruments. I remember in elementary school going, and they're like, everybody can try out for band. And when you went, they had like, oh, anybody can play instruments, they said, I guess. And then they gave these tests to be a drummer, and it was like, can you tap and like tap your foot and tap your other foot and do something else? And then I was just like so messed up, and they're just like, yeah, this is not for you, and just kind of like moved along. And then ever since then, I had tried playing guitar. I tried so many things, but there just was like a disconnect. And how she taught me to play ukulele was just so intuitive, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And part of it, like, honestly, just helped my brain to like open up and be able to relax. And now every morning I get up and I play the ukulele. And
Love
that's one of the first things that I do, and it's just to like bring my mind into this place where I don't have to be thinking about anything, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is definitely for me. I like playing it on YouTube too. It's fun. And play it on our podcast sometimes. So I have ADHD, and sometimes I use the ukulele. This is maybe weird, but I just play songs like from the 80s at like double or triple speed to get just to get the speed out. Get the speed out. I just want to get the speed out. And I know all the lyrics, and I can just like and do it real fast. And it just some of the energy out.
Nick, can you name some of those songs? I love this. This is the greatest. What are some of your favorite 80s
Oh my
songs?
god, I always play oh my gosh, I'll play Tiffany, Madonna. Right now I'm on like a Brian Adams kick, and
Oh,
like
Bryan Adams. There we go.
it's like Brian Adams songs. I know he's like Canadian, treasure, national treasure and
Yeah.
stuff. His songs are not good. They're not about good things. They're about cheating mostly.
Well, I will say, this probably isn't the greatest thing, but me and a friend went to see him, meet him in person one time when he was
No
started doing
way.
his. Remember, he got into photography in the
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
want to say the early 2000s, late, and he didn't look up at her at all when he passed it on, and she started tripping out because we waited in line like an hour and he didn't even make eye contact. I had to almost
Brian Adams.
drag her out of chapters because she was so mad. She started saying stuff, and I was like, oh, I'm like, the guy just he has so many fans. There's
Well,
only so much he can do.
based on his lyrics, probably not a good guy.
He's busy. He's doing other things. I love it. I love it. That's great. So, you've got the one movie. Can you refresh my memory? What's the one that's in theaters now?
So the I Am the Warrior residential school story
Yeah.
right now. It's being screened, and it will probably be screened for the next year in different film festivals. And it's actually already won like 5 awards for best short film. I've been very lucky. I think it's been in gosh, I want to say like close to 15 film festivals so far, and I just released it in September, so it's
Wow.
getting really like
Wow.
played a lot. I'm shocked,
Yeah.
um, because I didn't think it would be something that would be as well accepted, and I'm
Mm.
just very grateful that it's a message that can be continued to pass on through these. Once it's done doing the film festival tour, it will probably move into being on the NEDA app as well.
Oh.
Um, but we'll see. Just because it's a residential school story, it may not be that may not be its final home.
Hmm.
But it is something that's available to screen for free. And once it's out of the uh, film festival circuit, we will have screenings as well. But right now, it's available for free for any groups, schools, or communities. Anyone who wants to have a
Amazing.
screening, you can write to the Negweg Collective, negwegcollective@gmail.com, and we will send you a screening kit, and you can screen it.
That's amazing. Oh, just great. Um, so yeah, we're coming down to the last 5 minutes here. So yeah, I will go on and say what's next for you? Like what's coming up next? I just feel like it's funny that because I was going to ask you when you said that you didn't pick up instruments when you were younger, and just now I was actually thinking, I was like, wow, were you just good at everything and you just are you just good at everything and then you're like, hey, maybe I should try that, and all of a sudden fine art, animation, illustration, podcasts,
I can tell
ukulele,
you, I can tell you
apps.
the answer to all of that, and the answer is ADHD. So, because of my ADHD, I believe that one of my superpowers, I guess, that I get from it is that I have the ability to move from different things. I'll call it an ability to move from different things. frequently and easily. And it's better if I have a lot of things going because then I can move from that to that to that and eventually hopefully come back to that first thing and try to get some things done. So on the
Yeah.
outside, it does appear like, oh, we're great at just moving from things to things. And if you keep moving from things to things long enough, you'll tend to get a little bit okay at them, I think. I can't remember what it is. It's like master of, or what
Jack
is
of
it?
all trades, master of none.
Exactly. And bad at remembering
I
quotes.
love the fact that you're like, oh, I'm not that good at it. Well, we just won a bunch of awards, but I'm mediocre. I'm mediocre. I love that you're humble too. I wouldn't be there.
Oh, I'm
I'm
just happy that I get to like make stuff. When I was a kid, dream was just to be able to be an artist. I
Mhm.
was always drawing and doing stuff. I love the Flintstones, and I would like. I got in trouble one time because I took cellophane, I put it on the tube TV, and used like a marker to trace over the cellophane to like to try to get it down all the details, and then it went through, or I messed it up anyways. I ended up drawing on the TV. So not good. But my parents always told me that I could be anything I wanted. And I took that right to heart. And I was like, well, I want to be an artist, of course. Amazing life. Like it seems amazing. You're going to art shows and like all this stuff. And but when it was time for me to go to university or after school, they were like, so what do you want to be? And I was like, well, an artist, of course. And they're like, well, you like money, right? You like money. And I was like, oh yeah, I like money. I love money. You can buy stuff with it. It's great. And they're like, well, artists don't have a lot of money because you've heard of a starving artist, right? Like they're starving. And I'm like, oh God, I have heard of starving artists. They're starving. And I just pictured myself being this, like someone that didn't have a home or whatever. And I'm like begging on the street. And that's was me being an artist, I guess. And you should go and get a career and this can just be your hobby. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. And they're like, well, what do you want to do then? And I was like, okay, then I want to be a scientist.
Hence the bachelor in science, which I
Yes.
forgot to mention when I was listing off all the things that you can do, was that you have a degree.
I was meant to take that. And like, in all honesty, it was because I had the idea to ride whales at SeaWorld. And I was like, I want to be a marine biologist, or you have to be a marine biologist. All I want to do is ride the whales. But then I knew, oh, you have to be a marine biologist to ride the whales. So I'll go be a marine biologist, and then I'll get this job at SeaWorld riding the whales. Luckily, that didn't happen after all of the blackfish and all that stuff came out. I'm like, that's horrible. Like, that's what I wanted to do, be horrible to whales. Anyways, I didn't become that. I ended up failing out miserably
Mhm.
because it was not what I wanted to do. That's what my parents wanted me to do, was to find something that could make money. And what I wanted to do was be an artist. And I after that, I was like, hey, guess what? There's art school you can go to. As
Yeah,
it's the same as going to school for science. You can go to school for art. It's the same. So I did that
yeah,
instead.
yeah. It's funny how for people who grew up in the 80s and 90s, how it was like, yeah, you're not going anywhere with that stuff. And then all of a sudden the 2000s came and it's like, I think people who play video games, I think get more like the world championships of that get more views than the Super Bowl and other stuff.
It's
The amount
crazy.
of, you can make an app and become a billionaire, and they didn't, the human understanding was not at the same level as what technology has become. And so a lot of stuff has changed in that way. It's super
I
interesting.
will say, for anybody who wants to go be an artist, go be an artist, because otherwise you're just going to be miserable. There's only one life to live.
Yeah.
I am not. I'll testify right now. This is my house. I own it. I'm not without a home, out on the street, like trying to bump for money or anything like that. I make money doing this,
Yeah.
and have continued to make money for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's something that you can do for sure.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I also make money doing it. I actually turned down a
Nice.
lot of work because I'm like, no, I want to live the bohemian lifestyle. Like, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends
Yeah.
and just do one thing a week. This has been so great. I had no idea. I'm like, there's other stuff that when you were talking, I was like, me too. And I'm like,
Oh, that's awesome, Amanda. Well,
a-
I feel like we should do something together
Yeah, I
sometime, maybe.
know, I know. I'm working constantly. I'm at the Winnipeg Indigenous Film Collective here, which
Oh,
we're desperately trying to find artists from other provinces. So, and I also work at NIMAC. So, yeah, no, you're gonna hear from me, Tara.
okay.
I'm a huge fan. I've spent these past couple of days watching your stuff, and
Oh
I'm a
my gosh,
huge
that's
fan.
so awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
and now getting to talk with you, I'm now a huge fan of you in general. So this has been so great. Um, we're out of time, and I just want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank Freeze Frame for setting all of this up, because what an incredible film festival that they have here. The staff here is so great. I know I said that I worked here, but I like work part-time. I teach part-time, so I'm not complimenting myself. I swear. I'm complimenting
No, I think it's
everyone.
amazing, and I'm very appreciative, and the
Mhm.
fact that the Freeze Frame Festival is showing my film again.
Yeah.
Like this has been out for a while, and I'm just very grateful that it's something that keeps being shared, and
Mhm.
that the story can keep being seen. And it's
Yeah.
through these kind of film festivals that it's able to do that. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I love that they were able to bring you here. I will say that I did forget, we do have a trailer for Little Warrior, or no, I'm saying it wrong.
I am the warrior.
I Am the Warrior. That's the third time I've done that.
That's okay.
You have to send me the movie and then I'll stop doing it. We can play that on our way out, but for now, we'll say goodbye, and that's what we'll leave everybody with. It was so
Awesome.
great to see you. Bye, everybody.